When it comes to bodybuilding, size matters, but how much and at what cost? Today, we're delving into one of the most hotly debated moments in bodybuilding history. Markus Rühl's jaw-dropping 1999 Mr. Olympia debut. Ready for a journey into the heart of the size versus symmetry debate? Stick around because we're dissecting every angle of this bodybuilding controversy. In the nascent stages of bodybuilding, the sport focused on a harmonious blend of muscle size, symmetry, and overall aesthetics. The epitome of this ideal was Steve Reeves, who captured the imagination of fans and judges alike in the 1940s and 1950s with his classic, statuesque physique. Reeves embodied the golden ratio of bodybuilding, a balanced silhouette where each muscle group complemented the others. The 1970s saw the emergence of Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose physique transcended the mere concept of size and symmetry to include elements of stage presence and charisma. Arnold's muscles were not just bigger, they also had a unique flow and interrelation that set new standards in the sport. His influence was so monumental that the term Arnold era is often used to describe a period where bodybuilding embraced not only mass but also aesthetics and showmanship. Lee Haney, who dominated the Mr. Olympia stage from 1984 to 1991, added another dimension to the judging criteria. His reign brought a focus on conditioning and separation between muscle groups, showcasing how a bodybuilder could be both big and incredibly refined. Haney's success indicated that judges were looking for a complete package: size, symmetry, aesthetics, and a light-level conditioning. As bodybuilding progressed into the 1990s, the scales tipped favorably toward those who could bring astonishing levels of mass to the stage. Dorian Yates, a six-time Mr. Olympia from 1992 to 1997, ushered in the era of the mass monsters. His back alone was a marvel of bodybuilding, displaying thickness and width that had never been seen before. Yates' size was so overwhelming that it compelled judges to give him the nod, even when other competitors had arguably better symmetry or proportion. This emphasis on mass was further reinforced by Ronnie Coleman, who took the throne from 1998 through 2005. Coleman combined mass with surprising levels of conditioning and symmetry, a feat many thought was impossible. Judges now had little choice but to recognize that the sport had changed, as failing to reward Coleman's incredible package would have been seen as ignoring the very evolution of bodybuilding. Before setting foot on the Mr. Olympia stage in 1999, Markus Rühl had already turned heads in bodybuilding circles. He made his pro debut in 1997 and won his first FBB professional event, the Night of Champions, in 1999. What truly set Rühl apart, however, was not just his wins but the staggering mass he carried. His upper body, especially his shoulders and chest, had a fullness and size that was almost cartoonish, capturing the fascination and concern of the bodybuilding community. Rühl's arrival intensified discussions around whether the sport had reached an unsustainable emphasis on mass. He was a spectacle, but also a polarizing figure. To some, he represented the pinnacle of human potential. To others, he was a symbol of excess that could potentially derail the sport. Either way, Markus Rühl was considered a game-changer. His sheer mass pushed the boundaries of what was deemed possible in bodybuilding, setting the stage for an intense and continuing debate about the future and identity of the sport. Preparing for the most prestigious bodybuilding competition on the planet is an arduous undertaking, and Markus Rühl's preparation for the 1999 Mr. Olympia was no exception. Known for his hardcore training sessions, Rühl dedicated himself to grueling two-a-day workouts, focusing on each muscle group with relentless intensity. High-volume sets, heavy weights, and minimal rest periods were the hallmarks of his regime. His diet was equally meticulous, consuming upwards of 5,000 to 6,000 calories per day. Rühl's meal plan was a carefully orchestrated symphony of proteins, carbs, and fats, designed to fuel his titanic physique. Every gram of macronutrients was accounted for, every meal timed to perfection. He used strategic carbohydrate cycling and protein loading to maximize muscle fullness while minimizing body fat, aiming for an unprecedented level of conditioning. Markus Rühl's debut at the 1999 Mr. Olympia was an astonishing spectacle that left the audience and competitors alike in awe of his sheer size. Even among a lineup featuring the mass monsters of the era like Ronnie Coleman and Dorian Yates, Rühl stood out. His shoulders, chest, and arms seemed to defy physics, bursting with fullness and density that the sport had rarely seen before. Commentators and fans noted that his size was almost grotesque in its grandiosity, eclipsing competitors who, under normal circumstances, would be considered enormous. While Rühl's overwhelming mass earned him a unique place in bodybuilding history, it also ignited debates about the direction the sport was taking. Forums, magazines, and interviews were filled with discussions comparing Rühl's groundbreaking size to the more balanced physiques of competitors like Flex Wheeler and Shawn Ray. The question arose, had bodybuilding become a sheer size contest, and if so, was that a good thing? Some fans argued that Rühl's appearance on the Olympia stage symbolized a tipping point, marking the moment when size began to overshadow other aspects that had historically been valued. Proponents of classical bodybuilding ideals felt that Rühl's debut was a sign that the sport needed to reevaluate its judging criteria, bringing back a focus on the overall aesthetic package rather than just raw mass. The rise of mass monsters, like Markus Rühl, brought about increased scrutiny regarding the health risks associated with such extreme sizes. Medical experts and sports scientists began to question the long-term impact of carrying such massive amounts of muscle mass. Concerns were raised about cardiovascular health, joint and skeletal stress, and metabolic issues related to extreme dieting and dehydration protocols leading up to competitions. While bodybuilding had always carried a degree of health risks, the pursuit of ever-increasing size amplified these dangers. Cases of bodybuilders facing health complications or even premature death became cautionary tales that led to calls for the sport to reevaluate its priorities. Another inevitable topic of discussion was the role of performance-enhancing drugs, including anabolic steroids, in achieving the levels of mass displayed by competitors like Markus Rühl. While the use of these substances had been an open secret in bodybuilding circles for years, the sheer scale of new physiques drew attention from both media and regulatory bodies. The ethical implications were multifold. On one hand, the use of performance-enhancing drugs raised questions about fairness and integrity within the sport. On the other, there were concerns about sending a message that extreme size, and the drug protocols often required to achieve it, were acceptable or even desirable. The sport faced a moral dilemma. Should it continue to push the boundaries of human potential, even if it meant crossing ethical lines and risking the health of its athletes? Or should it refocus on a more balanced and sustainable ideal of human physicality? Markus Rühl's 1999 Mr. Olympia debut brought these debates to the forefront, encapsulating the complex tensions between spectacle and artistry, risk and reward, that continue to shape bodybuilding today. So where do you land in this age-old debate? Is Markus Rühl an evolutionary leap forward in bodybuilding or a step too far from its artistic roots? Markus Rühl's 1999 debut forced us to question what bodybuilding is really about. Whether you're team size or team symmetry, one thing's clear: his entrance onto the Olympia stage was a defining moment. Enjoyed this episode? Smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into bodybuilding's most controversial moments.